There we go. Good morning for another scintillating edition of the Inglorious Pastords.
I can feel it.
I see a name change coming for us.
Well, talk about name change, Bruce.
I feel like our next name change should be Inglorious Farmers. Because there's big news on the horizon.
Wait a second. What's the name of the show with Jeremy?
Clarkson's Farm.
Clarkson's Farm.
This would be Martin's Farm.
Pastords Farms.
Pastords Farms. So I like that. That has sort of a pastoral
pasture.
Yes, the whole.
Yes.
It works extremely well.
So pastards and pastures. Inglorious Pastures.
Oh, that's great. Wait. We could change the whole thing. We'd have to change a lot of titles from the last 3 years.
Oh, but Inglorious Pastures.
That's good.
Has some interesting.
There's some biblical Psalms kind of stuff woven into that. There's the farming feel.
Right. And I've liked for us to move towards working off some musical connections because of both of us love music so much.
What does that have to do with pastures?
Well,
a psalm.
The Psalms, right. I'm thinking of these pastoral. So you have David, who wrote so many of the Psalms, who was a farmer.
Yeah. And
pastoral and pastural.
Yeah. The farmer king.
Yes.
Shepherd king.
See, all of this is it's eerily, it's a sign. Yeah, we're changing.
Yeah. Inglorious Pastures of green. No, I was thinking you were going to bring up Green Acres. I'm like, Inglorious Acres. Which is also fun. So, in case you didn't know, Roger's looking at an 8-acre parcel of land that abuts are 54 acres.
It's a great word, abuts.
It is a great word. You don't get to use it much except when you're talking about legal descriptions of property.
Yep.
Because
yes.
If you're using it in relation to cars, that typically means there's been an accident. Why is your car abutting mine?
And if you're using it in relation to people,
also problematic.
Also problematic.
Too close. You're in the bubble here. So just real quick, just to get it out of the way, it's another tough year to be a Bronco fan. Last year the magic number was 17. Looks like that's going to be the number again this year. We can't score 17 points. We missed an extra point and lost 17-16.
Which was
because even with Russell freaking Wilson, we cannot throw more than 177 yards nor score 17 points. So there's that.
And wasn't that 17-16 score the exact score of the first game last season?
You know it was, Raj, because you looked it up. And in fact, you told me the glorious statistic of 22 out of the last 28 games were lost by 1 point or less or something crazy. I'm like, yep.
That was, yeah.
So it's like to be a Bronco fan.
You've lost 17 of the last 22 one-run games. And you've had a lot of one-run games. So it's...
17. No, it's 22.
It's like you guys had a discouraging loss. I felt like the Patriots had a somewhat encouraging loss.
Yeah.
We'd lose to the Eagles, who played in the Super Bowl last year.
And without the picks, you win the game.
Right. Played it very, very close. When it was raining early on, a couple of sloppy turnovers. After that, we outscored them. So it feels like, and we were playing, I think, 8 rookies started that game for the Patriots.
Oh, that's good.
Which is,
yeah.
And played 2 offensive linemen were rookies. 2 or 3 defensive players, rookies.
Mm-hmm.
Got a lot of snaps. 2 wide receivers, rookie. So it was phenomenal. I think, yeah. So, which isn't typical to get rookie playing time with Bill Belichick. Anyway,
he's obviously committing to the future,
right?
And sees a lot of potential in there.
it also means it looks like we had a pretty good draft class right now. So that's
Yeah, if you got that many
encouraging.
rookies on the field and you had an, like you said, an encouraging win.
Now we can lament our losses, but I think we may prefer. Well, I think of the Jets, who
I didn't even track the rest of the scores. I looked up Patriots and I looked up Broncos. That was it.
you don't know the Jets.
Mm-mm.
It's probably the most discouraging win they've had.
They won.
So Bruce,
Aaron Rodgers and the Jets won.
stay here.
Why couldn't we have gotten Aaron Rodgers?
Bruce, no.
Oh.
4 plays into the game, Aaron Rodgers gets tackled, torn Achilles, out for the year. He may never, it's
Play again.
possible, may never play again. And they were down, came back, miraculously won the game. Their defense is spectacular.
Okay.
So-
Wow.
So there's no Aaron Rodgers story this year. It's over 4 snaps.
That makes me very sad.
Oh no, it's very,
Because
For
I was
football
excited,
fans-
right? I think I was excited for football in general because I think Aaron Rodgers creates a lot of stir wherever he's going to go. You know, had such a great run at the Packers.
and
4 plays in.
4
Wow.
he took 4 snaps with the Jets.
Mm.
And he's been this model citizen. You know, he took some pay cut things. He did some
Yep.
things that,
Wow.
and he was working with the quarterback that they drafted a couple years ago that's just struggled so much, who had to take over the game after
Right.
him. But
Who's their quarterback behind Aaron?
what's his name? I can see his face.
He's the starter now.
Baby face. Oh yes. They drafted him 2 years ago.
Okay.
One of the top 5 draft picks.
I just wondered
Anyway.
if I remembered him from college years. I'm sure I would.
So anyway,
Speaking of college football, Tennessee could easily start 6-0 this year, and then face Alabama at like 5-1.
so that Austin P game didn't scare you at all?
Well, I didn't see any of it. It scared the pollsters because we dropped from 9 to 11. So was it like 30-13?
Yeah.
So we won the game. That was good.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe 30-13. Maybe they may have scored a little bit. Anyway, but it was.
Yeah,
I
I kind of looked at the numbers. It wasn't great.
It wasn't great.
No.
At home
Right.
against Austin freaking P.
Austin P. Hey, whatever. it
Hey,
is.
what I don't know.
I
Yes,
don't know. Austin P.
I'm good.
I know if I went fiscal, I want to be Austin Pay.
Hey.
That's just me, though. P-E-A-Y, I think, is how it's. Anyway, but we got Florida this week at 6 p.m. It's a game that I'll actually be able to see because I'm in town. I'm very excited about that. So, yeah, I mean, that game, when I saw the score, I was like a little disappointed. I was like, it should have been more like 50-13. But I'm like, maybe Austin Pay is going to win their division and be in a bowl game this year. You never know.
This is what I'm hearing.
But the bottom line
Mr.
is,
Optimism. That's
well,
good.
the bottom line is, a few years back, we lost to Georgia State at home.
Right.
Okay, so a win's a win
No.
at this point where I live. A win is a win.
No, it's just I can't jump on 6-0 as just a given after
Well,
that game.
now you do have me worried, Raj. I was feeling really good until you started talking about Austin Pay and how good they're not. Apparently, I think you're dissing them. I think they're a great team.
No,
They
no,
put up 13
they just
points.
became a college last year, so
Right.
they
They haven't even made university status yet.
were
Oh, Lord of mercy.
they were a reform school last year.
So, I'm back from the Holy Land,
You're back from the Holy Land.
Which
Welcome back. Yep.
which is why we missed everyone last week.
Why we missed last week.
I apologize for that. I'm still way jet lagged. So like, is it not? It's almost 9 o'clock here now. So there it is, 4 p.m. 4 p.m.
Okay.
So they're 7 hours ahead of us.
Yep.
So like, I would call Marlena at sometimes 5:30 in the morning there because it was like 10:30 at night here. And I could talk to her before she went to bed. I mean, she's usually gone to bed by then, but typically I was calling her somewhere around 2 or 3 o'clock.
No, you called me one. That was a highlight. I appreciated that.
But a couple of surprises. Number one, I'll tell you, you need to go to the Holy Land at some point. Oh, and by the way, the only thing I got in the Holy Land was a $6 bracelet. That was it. It's the only trinket that I bought. But
we're now promoting your trip next year.
We can. Would you like to promo my
Let's
trip
just promo it.
We're going to go back to the Holy Land
You
next
need to
year,
be at the Holy Land.
and you can go with me. And I've been there now, so I know a little more about what to expect, what not to expect. A couple of things.
And some things you're going to make sure are done differently next time.
Yes, because, man, it was weird, Roger. I had this idea in my mind that the Holy Land and all of the places where Jesus, so we went to Nazareth and Capernaum and Sea of Galilee, went out on a boat on the Sea of Galilee, went all the way up to the Syrian border where we could literally see the Syrian border, and all of their mortars aimed this way and their guns behind us aimed that way.
How are the Syrians and Israelis getting along these days?
Not good, Raj. I won't even tell you what our guide said on the border. She said, they're watching us right now. I mean, she had some strong, she was an Israeli, not a believer.
With some choice words for the
Syrians. And I'm like, hey, she's not a follower of Jesus, because he said, don't hate your enemy. But I realized, Roger, Jesus actually referenced that. You've heard it said, hate your enemy, love your neighbor, hate your enemy.
Right.
Well, she's still in that zone. Because we have Lebanon directly north of us, also an enemy. She had nothing good to say about them. And then Syria. What's so funny is, another thing I didn't realize, Israel is about the size of New Jersey.
That's crazy.
So you have this, we're seeing, Roger, all the Old Testament story sites, David and Goliath, Saul and his sons, Mount Gilboa, Bethshan.
All this
and
occurs
all of the Jesus sites.
In New Jersey.
In something the size of New Jersey. Because Zach was asking me last night about the trip, and he's like, how far did you have to go? And I'm like, that's about 70 miles. It's just not, we're going all around the Sea of Galilee, and then down to the Jordan River.
You're crossing the country, crisscrossing the country, so and it's
very small
day trips.
But it has 8,000 plus years of war-torn history. When I think about America, I'm like, we have no history, comparatively.
Right.
A couple hundred years, but they have thousands of years, and the amount of conflict and wars that have been waged in this little
New Jersey.
That was just mind blowing. So
yeah,
literally we're one part of the day we're up here where Jesus walked, and the second half of the day we're down at Mount Gilboa where Saul and his sons were killed and then hung on the gates of Bethshan, and the ruins of that are in that area. It's just, that was super surprising. Number two surprise was how Catholic the entire thing is. So all the holy sites that you go to with basically, except for the Western Wall, the Wailing Wall, it's covered with Roman Catholic cathedrals and churches.
Okay.
So you have Church of the Nativity, where Jesus was born. You have Church of the Annunciation, where Mary got the word from the angel. You have Church of the Visitation, where Mary visited her cousin Elizabeth in the hills. It's the church of everything that ever happened. Church of the Holy Sepulchre.
Church of the Porks.
That was the funniest thing. Oh my goodness. At one point, you got to understand, our guide was telling us this is where the miracle of the porks took place. And we're all back there like, I don't remember.
Is that one of the apocryphal gospels?
Right. Was that? Yeah, maybe it's in the I didn't talk about that.
Is that the Gospel of Thomas, maybe? I don't know.
She goes, no, this is the hillside where all of the porks ran down the hill into the sea. And I'm like, the pigs. Got it. So
we don't see that as a miracle so much as a mess.
Right. So when we think of pork, we think of something that has already been slaughtered. When you're eating it. The pig, or the swine, if you're King James, swine's a great word. Doesn't get used near enough.
Right.
But the miracle of the porks. So it was very interesting. A lot of times we're visiting these holy sites, and they're literally in the middle of a mass, and we're just like roaming through the building, people taking pictures. I'm like, can you imagine trying to preach or teach? You've got 45 person tour groups rolling through there, fascinating. And there's certain places, you had to have your head covered, and then other places where you couldn't have a hat on. And a couple of our guys had shorts that didn't completely cover their knees, so they made them wear some kind of kilt. They actually had like wrapping paper, tall pieces to wrap around them.
Really?
Men, they didn't want men to show their knees. The ladies had to have their shoulders covered at certain places, not at all of them. It was very random. We had two of our guys picked out, and then another 4 guys in shorts that no one did anything about. Just very fascinating.
Okay.
So that was how Catholic it is. was also super surprising.
But I think one of the things you said is that stuck with me, even when you encountered the hatred and the vitriol and the tension, it gives this powerful window into Jesus' day. It's not that
Roger, I know
we're we preach sermons where we're trying to capture the division between Jews and Gentiles and Samaritans, and you get this graphic 2,000 years later that the reality of that, the intensity of that, and it's helpful to see that in the context of Jesus' time, for me, not only to again appreciate how radical the call of Jesus was to love your enemies, but also the power of the gospel to change people who at one point wanted to call down fire from heaven on Samaritan villages.
right.
And over time with Jesus and the power of the Spirit would one day preach the gospel that in different
to the Gentiles and to the Samaritans. And it's interesting that even in Jesus's what we call the Great Commission, he includes Samaria. He makes sure they don't miss that.
Right.
In Judea and Samaria and to the rest of the world. And it's interesting that of all places you could, he didn't say in Judea and Galilee, because they were all from Galilee. Might have been understood that they're going to be preaching the gospel in Galilee and Samaria. Well, I'm just coming back. So they have very much the Old Testament mindset. When I say Old Testament, or at least what the teachers of the law taught them.
Yeah.
Love your neighbor, hate your enemy. So Jordan, which is like the Dead Sea, is cut in half. The Jordan River is cut in half. Half of it is owned by Jordan, half of it by Israel.
Okay.
And so Jordan's their friend, and Egypt is their friend.
Currently,
until they're not.
Right.
So Jordan's to the east and Egypt's to the south.
My wife Joy, who went to the Holy Land decades ago, remembers Jordan being
an enemy,
a nightmarish enemy. Like when they crossed into Jordan, it took them hours to get through. Anyway.
So Roger, it was interesting. One of our guys pointed out, even when we're close to the Jordan, like turrets pointed in that direction. In other words, and I understand why they have so many fortresses, turrets, military things on their borders. They have been the most occupied land in all of history in terms of people coming in. I mean, when thousands and thousands of years of work. In other words, it brought so much meaning to when Jesus said, nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. I'm like, they were saying it constantly.
Yeah.
The Holy Land has always been this place of conflict.
Yeah.
Not the peace of Jerusalem. And even when you go into Jerusalem, another shocker, you'd be surprised how little I knew about the Holy Land going into that trip. So the old Jerusalem, what's called the old city, is divided into 4 quarters. The Jews have one quarter, 1/4 of that, the Jewish quarter, and that's the one that you have to go through TSA screening to get into. And there's armed guards with the AK-47s and everything right there. And you have to, take off the hat, take off the belt, everything comes out of your pocket before you go in there.
Into the Jewish quarter. How do you designate a quarter? In other words, when I'm thinking, say 4 quarters.
So they just
can I see this visually or?
No, you only see it visually at the Jewish quarter. Now you'll see it like there's the Muslim quarter. And so tourists can go in and out of that, no problem. There's no gate. There's no, our guide had to tell us we're now entering.
Okay.
Because you didn't see it. But, in the Muslim quarter, you're seeing a lot more ladies that have the full headdress on.
Okay.
And dresses all the way down to
so you're getting
shoes.
Visual clues. You're entering into a quarter, right?
They had the Armenian quarter, which I didn't even know existed.
No.
Which was a whole thing. And then you had the Christian quarter. When I say Christian quarter, that was basically, the Catholic quarter.
So the city is divided into 4.
Roger, in other words, division is not just, it's ethnic, it's political, it's religious. Like those quarters are divided less on ethnicity, more on your belief system.
Okay.
The other thing another surprising thing, 2 of the cities, we couldn't even go into Jericho. We had to go around Jericho because it's Palestinian controlled. So we literally, as we're coming down the Jordan River, we have to make this huge loop around it because our guide's an Israeli and she cannot go in that territory. Because I kind of wanted to see Jericho just for fun.
Right.
I could see it in the distance and circle around all the way to the Dead Sea before then we could turn back west. The other thing, when we went to Bethlehem, I didn't know this, Bethlehem is Palestinian controlled. But everyone wants to see Bethlehem. So our guide had to get off the bus before we got to Bethlehem. We dropped her off at a hotel, and then a Palestinian guide got on the bus and took us into Bethlehem. It was...
Wait, so the Palestinian got into an Israeli bus?
Well, the driver is a Christian. He's a Catholic. And we're a bunch of tourists. So as long as none of the tourists are Jews, yeah, they can go in if they're not Israelis.
So the biggest thing, yeah, Jews are absolutely out, and I'm sure.
And for us, in our experience, Bethlehem was the most commercialized. So it was street vendors coming out. I mean, literally, we had street vendors putting things in people's bag and asking for money for it. So it's like next year, I'm like, we'll probably skip Bethlehem. I know people don't want to hear that, but it is not what you think. Another interesting thing is how severe the topography is there. I mean, steep mountains, up, down.
Okay.
Like the Dead Sea is at 827 feet below sea level. So, and Jericho's on that same plane. And then, Jerusalem is literally 3,300 feet above it.
Okay.
So it took a long, long drive in the bus to get all the way back up to Jerusalem. So that was just fascinating. You need to do it at some point. Even when I was reading Matthew this week, it's like, I've been there. I could see certain things. I was listening to worship music on the way in this morning, and one was about the resurrection, and it just brought me to tears. I'm like, I can see Jesus standing outside that tomb as light is breaking, and it's this.
And you said the Golgotha,
the place of the skull.
The place of the skull was one of the most.
For me, that was the most moving thing that we ran into.
Okay.
Where I was at one point, we're sitting, and we have a guy telling us the history of the area, and I'm sitting 50 feet away from where Jesus was crucified. And I can imagine it because it's untainted by any of the commercialism, and it's still just a rocky outcrop.
There's not a church built there?
There's not a church built there. There's not a church built at the tomb there. The Catholics believe that the tomb is further up in Jerusalem. Part of the reason I believe that the garden tomb that we saw was the real tomb is Hebrews 12:13, because my group asked me about this. Hebrews 12:13 talked about Jesus being crucified, shedding his blood outside the city. Therefore, let us join him outside the city. And Golgotha was very much outside the city. But it was sobering. Going to the empty tomb was very moving. When we all went into the 7 of us together, they let 7 in at a time. And so we had a group of 7.
Yeah.
So we all went in together, and I felt like I should pray or something. And all I said was, God, I have no words. We're just so grateful. I mean, several people were moved to tears just there.
Yeah.
So it was powerful. It was so good. And you have to go with, you do have to kind of, because parts of Jerusalem are like the Gatlinburg of the Middle East.
Oh gosh, that's such a graphic picture.
Yeah, you kind of have to tune out.
That hurts my heart.
I know. You have to tune out some of that stuff. Really, seriously. With all the vendors and the marketplace, but it also helped you. It also helped you realize graphically what Jesus experienced when he's going into the temple courts, and there's markets on both sides. And people just selling, and buy pigeons from us, and yeah, we'll change your money, because they have plenty of money changing that still goes on there, because American dollars versus shekels.
Interesting.
So you got a feel for how frustrating that could be in terms of, I think, we're missing the point. But anyway, yeah, very, very good experience. Sobering on so many fronts. I felt so sad for the Jewish people, because when we're in the Jewish quarter, and when we're even with our Israeli guide, I realized it's a people living in darkness, that the light has come, but they're blinded. They're still got pictures of, as we went into the tomb of David. It's also like a seminary for Jewish scribes, teachers of the law, whatever they are now. These guys are literally reading scrolls, actual scrolls. They're rocking. like this so that they can, and humming and chanting, and they've got the long tassels, and one of them literally had scripture bound on his arm and these really tight black bands and around his forehead. And I just felt terribly sad. I'm like, they don't know the grace of God, and they're still trying to find a righteousness, a favor with God that the law will never provide them.
Yeah.
And you can never be enough.
You know, I read this week, Dallas Willard was once asked, well, Dallas Willard asked a guy,
yeah,
what's the one word that you feel like best describes Jesus? He asked this guy, and the guy's pondering, oh my gosh, it's a impossible answer, but he turns it on Dallas Willard. He says, what do you think? What's the word? And Dallas Willard didn't hesitate much. He said, relaxed. And one person commenting on this said, he's got 3 years to save the world, and he still attends weddings and goes fishing. And it's this it's this idea, this beautiful walking. I think about the promise of Jesus. Come to me, all you are weary and burdened. And what am I going to give you? I'm going to give you relax.
Uh-huh.
I'm going to give you rest. And this is what this word rest captures so many things. But that's when it's the ache I feel for the people you're talking about. But it's the ache I feel
for Christians
in the United States who, at every level, whether it's still trying to win God's favor and his love, still trying to impress people, I've still got to prove myself. It seems like this message of when the more the gospel of Jesus gets in us, the more we can rest.
It's so interesting you say that, because I experienced that even when I was over there, because, you know, before I left, I was crazy busy. I realized this kind of marks my life a little too much. Okay. Crazy busy. And we're working on this, getting a house refinanced and getting all this stuff done. And then I was a little bothered. I'm going to be gone for a week. And so that means we can't get any of the refinance stuff done. And they sent me, we need 5 more documents and this stuff. And
of course.
While I'm in the Holy, well, I can't do all that from there. So I just said, hey, I'm in the Holy Land for a week. I'll work on it when I get back. But I realized I need to, it's interesting, relax. I found this place of peace going, hey, if that works out or doesn't work out, it's fine. You know, it's fine either way. It doesn't matter. We're going to be fine. God's always provided for us and taken care of us. And only one book was brought by someone she carried it with her the whole time they were there. And multiple people commented on that book because they would see it on our table when we were eating. You know what it was? The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry.
Hurry, yes.
And so I told our guys first day, I said, I want you to be present this week.
Isn't that a Willard quote?
Probably.
I think
John Mark Comer wrote the book.
Yes,
I don't know if that wouldn't surprise me if that was a Willard quote.
I think it may be a Willard quote. But anyway, John Mark Comer, I've heard him.
But we felt that because when you do a Holy Land trip in a week, you feel a little pressed for time. Like we're going from 7:45 until 5 o'clock every day, seeing as many sites as we possibly can. I'm like, be present. I said, don't just look, see. Because that was kind of the word that God had given me in my heart, to really see things, not just look at things. Because I can look at all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
So I kept every place. I tried to imagine the story of when it happened there. Sea of Galilee, very moving, because I could actually see where Jesus stood when he said to his disciples, let's go to the other side. And then I could see the land and how the crowds could follow them on the land all the way around the lake and get to where they were. So it was extraordinary. And even then, Jesus didn't. Isn't it interesting? He wasn't running on the water. He was walking on the water.
And he would often get away to solitary place. Yep. So all this stuff that was important to do, the healings, the getting more of the gospel message out and so on. And it struck me, what hit me was he'd struck this beautiful balance between saving and savoring, between mission, these things we've got to do, or even when I think about for Christian, we can think there's so much lostness, there's so much need, there's so much poverty, there's so much hunger, but we're not called to simply save. We are called to savor. We're called to rest. We're called to enjoy Jesus. So finding that balance
between mission and mushrooming.
Let's go with saving and savoring.
Okay, it's better. I gotta admit, it just made me laugh when I thought about it in my head. So there's that. All right, we'll see you next week.
All right.
Probably. I mean, it's 50-50.